Hello, kamusta bonjour? I am Alpha Aurelio and you are watching the Alpha Vlog. So for today's video, we are going to discuss about a certain year of a certain country. And maybe it has something to do with their literature, their plays, or their food, or whatsoever. So we are going to our own country, the Philippines. So the era that I will be taking you this time is, maybe I could look at to the history book. Wait, where's the history book? Ta-da! Okay, but first, has any one of you knows what history is? So let me tell you. History is the study of the past and it contains collection of information and events from the past that is being analyzed by a historian. So, what era will I going to take it this time? So, I'm going to take you to the Spanish era. Spanish period is when the Spaniards colonized our country from 1521 to 1898. And their main goal is called the three G's. The gold, glory, and God. The gold is the simulation of money, and the glory is for supremacy, and God as their main or most important goal, which is to convert the natives to Christians. So I have here questions that we will be answering this time so that we could all learn about what happened in the Spanish era, especially in terms of their literature. So the first question is, do our ancestors have their own literature before the coming of the Spaniards? Well, the answer is yes. They have already their own literature before the coming of Spaniards or any other foreigners here in the Philippines. Our ancient literature is all about the customs and traditions of our ancestors and which is in the form of folklores and stories. And one more thing, our ancestors have their own alphabet that time, which is similar to the Malayo-Polynesian alphabet, and it is very different from what the Spaniards have brought here in the Philippines. Whatever records have our ancestors left that time, they are being burned by Spaniards because they believe that this is works of evil and are written on easily be perished materials like barks of trees, what are those, stones or leaves and others. Our other literatures are in the form of folk songs which mirrors our traditions. The other forms of literature during the pre-Spanish era are the folktales, legends, epic, and folk songs. And the other pre-Spanish poetry are in the form of epigrams, riddles, maxims, chant, sayings, and sawikain. So
Legends are forms of prose, the common theme of which is about the origin of a thing, place, location, or name. The events are imaginary, devoid of truth, and unbelievable. Its aim is to entertain. Folktales are one of the oldest forms of Philippine literature that emerged in the pre-Spanish period. These songs mirrored the early forms of culture. Many of these have 12 syllables. Folktales are made up of stories about life, adventure, love, horror, and humor, where one can derive lessons about life. These are useful to us because they help us appreciate our environment, evaluate our personalities, and improve our perspectives in life. Aside from the aforementioned epics, there are still other epics that can be read and studied like the following: Bedasari, Moro Epic, Hari sa Bukid, Visayan Epic, Biyag ni Lamang, Ilocano Epic, and Kumintang, Tagalog Epic. Other forms of pre-Spanish poetry. A. Epigrams or salawikain. These have been customarily used and served as the laws or rules on good behavior by our ancestors. To others, these are like allegories or parables that impart lessons for the young. B. Riddles, bugtong, or palaisipan. These are made up of one or more measured lines with rhyme and may consist of 4 to 12 syllables. C. Chant or bulong, used in witchcraft or enchantment. D. Maxims. Some are rhyming couplets with verses 5, 6, or 8 syllables, each line having the same number of syllables. E. Sayings or kasabihan, often used in teasing or to comment on a person's actuations. F. Sawikain or sayings with no hidden meanings. Influences of Spanish period to Philippine literature. The first Filipino alphabet, called Alibata, was replaced by Roman alphabet. The teaching of Christian doctrine became the basis of religious practices. The Spanish language, which became the literary language during this time, lent many of its words to our language. Ancient literature was collected and translated to Tagalog and other dialects. Many grammar books were printed in Filipino like Tagalog, Ilocano, and Visayan. Our periodicals during this time gained a religious tone. Religious themes dominated the literature of the time, and European legends and traditions brought here became assimilated in our songs, corridos, and moro-moros.
So if you are going to look at the works of our ancestors during that era, those influences are very evident. That leads to the third question. Who are the prominent writers during the Spanish era? So who are they? Let's go to discuss them.
Francisco Baltazar is also known as Francisco Balagtas. He was a prominent Filipino poet and is widely considered one of the greatest Filipino literary laureates for his impact on Filipino literature. The famous epic Florante at Laura is regarded as his defining work, Francisco Balagtas Baltazar. Jose Rizal was a Filipino nationalist and polymath during the tail end of the Spanish colonial period of the Philippines. He is an ophthalmologist by profession. Rizal became a writer and a key member of the Filipino propaganda movement, which advocated political reforms for the colony under Spain. He was executed by the Spanish colonial government for the crime of rebellion after an anti-revolution, inspired in part by his writings, broke out. Though he was not actively involved in its planning or conduct, he ultimately approved of its goals, which eventually led to Philippine independence. Andres Bonifacio was a Filipino revolutionary leader and the president of Tagalog Republic. He is often called the father of the Philippine Revolution. He was one of the founders and latter supreme of the Kataas-Taasan Kagalang-galang Katipunan ng mga Anak ng Bayan, or simply and more popularly called Katipunan, a movement which sought the independence of the Philippines from Spanish colonial rule and started the Philippine Revolution. He is considered a de facto national hero of the Philippines and is also considered by some Filipino historians to be the first president of the Philippines. And the last is Leona Florentina. She was a Filipino poet in the Spanish and Ilocano languages. She is considered as the mother of Philippine women's literature and the bridge from oral to literary tradition.
So that's all for today. I hope that you have learned something about what I have discussed for today's video. Till next time again, bye-bye!